So, how am I going to paint you? How do you think? Ooh, Jurassic World is coming out soon. I could do it as Blue, the velociraptor. Yes, I think I shall. Hello Internet, I hope you're all doing well. You may be aware that a film has just come out by the name of Jurassic World Dominion. And that got me thinking about how I could use some of the paint schemes or colour schemes from that film in my own paint jobs, because I have been a huge Jurassic fan basically my whole life. And obviously Blue, the velociraptor from this past trilogy, has a pretty distinctive colour scheme. And for quite some time the knob on Smasha Squig has been staring at me, because it has almost been a full year since I received that model and I still have not painted it. So I thought I'd use the release of the Jurassic World Dominion film as a way of pushing myself to paint this knob on Smasha Squig. So here we go, it's painted. Yeah, I'm just going to show you how I made it look like Blue, the velociraptor from the Jurassic World films. So in a moment that's quite out of the ordinary for me, I decided to start this model with a grey base coat. Now if you've watched any number of my videos, you know I do not like to do this kind of thing. I usually like to mix in a purple or a different colour into our base tones, whatever it's going to be, to add a bit of, I don't know, interest, a bit of warmth, a bit more colour, just something a bit more interesting. But for this model I wanted to go against my normal kind of approach, and so I went in with a nice dark grey and covered the whole of the Squig's body in that paint. After that it was a matter of working up through different variations of grey, starting quite dark, leading up to quite light, and I applied them using a stippling technique where I use a dry brush and get, I'd say, about 50% of the paint that you'd normally have for the dry brushing technique on your brush. After that you just sporadically stipple it over the whole model and it ends up with this really nice organic looking texture. This is how I actually weather my vehicles and stuff. It's a really good way of layering up colours in an organic fashion. So after a few different layers of grey, it was time to sketch in the distinctive blue marking of Blue. And basically what that is, it is a streak of blue running from the eye down to the tip of the tail. I did reference some of the images for Jurassic World when doing this, because dependent on what side of the raptor's head you're looking at, the markings around the eye is slightly different, and I wanted to replicate that a little bit. For sketching this in, all I did was use a dark blue, and I would then use slightly lighter ones on top just to add a bit of depth. Once I had played about with a few different tones of blue, I outlined the blue streak with a light grey. This helps it pop even more off the grey base, especially by using a grey that is lighter than anywhere else on the model. Then I decided to use a blue wash over the whole thing to try and unify the colour scheme a little bit. I know that I said that I was doing something different in not having any coloured recesses, but I just couldn't help myself. Grey just looked way too boring in my opinion, so I washed the whole model with a bit of blue, waited for it to dry, and then dry brushed on some really light greys in the areas that I felt would benefit most from it. And that was kind of the face and the tops of the legs, places that were quite raised and would catch more light and be more exposed to the elements. I went for a slightly different approach to the teeth to what I normally do. Normally it's a mix of browns up to bone kind of colour, but instead I mixed bone and pink, or red to be more specific. It was corn red, a nice deep red that I could then make more pink by mixing in these bone colours. And I went up from quite a dark colour to a really light colour near the tips of the teeth, just to make it seem a bit more fleshy in the mouth. I think it actually really worked. I think it looks quite nice, but who knows if I'll do it again. I might just do the normal brown thing from now on, I don't know. One more thing to note about this model before I do the grand reveal, and that is a part that I unfortunately did not film because I didn't intend on filming anything more than the squig. But on the orc knob I actually did something a bit different. I used an entirely different purple to what I usually do for my orcs, and that was purple by Vallejo model colour. Now there are two things to note about how I use this purple, and one is that in general it was just a much colder purple than I usually use, and two, I integrated it into every step of the skin. Now if you've seen my orc skin video, you know that it starts out with a purple to a dark green mix to get all the shadows and all that pre-shaded with a nice purple hue. But instead I decided to mix it into every single layer of the skin, and as a result it is toned down much more, but the transitions seem to be a lot smoother. And I actually think this shade of purple lends itself to a more grim dark look, which is nothing that I've ever aimed for with my orcs. I've always wanted them to lean on that cartoony kind of aspect that they have, but I actually think it works quite nicely. But you can be the judge, so let's move on to the grand reveal. So this video was just a bit of fun. For those of you who watch regularly and want to know what's going on, I am sorry for the lack of videos recently. My work life has gone through the roof. I wasn't full time a few months ago, and now I am, and it's very difficult to balance the two things. So videos will be more infrequent, but they are coming, I promise. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you for liking, commenting and subscribing. And until next time, I'll see you later.